My breathing sounded like somebody else's, fast, shallow, terrified. I turned off the interior lights and sat in the darkness. That's when I heard the footsteps coming upstairs. I used to work as a fire lookout, one of those strange, solitary jobs nobody believes still exist. I'd sit in a wooden tower for days at a time, deep in the forest, with nothing but binoculars, radios, and the endless tree lines stretching like an ocean in every direction. Most people think it sounds peaceful, but solitude can play tricks on you. And sometimes, you see things you weren't supposed to see. This happened in the summer of 2019, at a remote post in northern Idaho. The tower I was assigned to was called Stone Cap Lookout, a 40-foot structure built in the 1,940 seconds, perched on a granite bluff with no road access. They drop you off by ATV, and after that, you were alone for a week. I didn't mind it. In fact, I liked the quiet. The sunsets, the smell of pine, the sense of being completely cut off from everything. But there was one part of the job that always made me uneasy. The nights. Out there, darkness isn't like darkness in the city. It's endless, ancient, alive. Nothing makes a sound unless it's moving. So every crack of a twig, every distant rustle, every freak gust of wind seems meaningful. My story begins on the fourth night of my shift. The first light. I had just finished logging the last weather reading of the evening. It was a pretty standard night. Warm, windy, and low humidity. Everything was calm. At around 11 p.m., I stepped outside onto the catwalk to get some fresh air. It was one of those moonless nights where the sky feels like a black sheet. I could barely make out the treetops below. But then I saw something. A light. A single, white light. At first, I thought it was a plane, but it was too low. Or maybe a camper. I was not sure. It was sitting on Ridge 46, a rocky spine about 2 miles to the northeast. There were no trails on that ridge, no campsites, no roads, nothing. It flickered once, then steadied. I leaned forward, thinking maybe it was another lookout. But Stone Cap was the only active tower in that region. Maybe someone was lost? But why would a lost hiker be up there? The light blinked again, this time deliberately. 2 short flashes, 1 long. I froze for a second because that wasn't random. That looked like a signal. Against my better judgment, I found myself raising my hand and waving, even though I knew no one could possibly see me from that distance. It was just instinct. The moment my hand lifted, the light instantly blinked again. 2 short flashes, 1 long. Exactly the same pattern. My stomach tightened. It felt like it was answering me. I went back inside and grabbed my binoculars. When I focused on the ridge, I realized the light wasn't a flashlight. It wasn't a fire. It wasn't a campsite lantern. It was strange, almost like a sphere. For almost a minute, I stared at it. But then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it went out. I waited for it to return, but the forest was pitch black and silent. After 20 minutes, I forced myself to go back inside and log it as unverified visual anomaly, which is basically lookout lingo for, I saw something but I don't want to sound crazy. I tried to sleep afterward, but sleep didn't come. My second night. The next day was uneventful and made me question whether the night before even happened. But as night approached, I found myself constantly checking the ridge, scanning the tree line and waiting. I didn't want the light to return, but at the same time, something inside me wanted the light to return, but I don't know why. It showed up at 12:17 a.m. I was inside the tower, reading, when the window suddenly lit up for a split second, just a flash, like someone snapping a photo in the dark. I rushed out to the catwalk. There it was again. Same spot, but this time there were 2 lights. They hovered side by side, maybe 20 feet apart. Then one of them blinked. 2 short flashes, 1 long. The exact same pattern. I felt different this time. It was the feeling you get when you realize something is watching you back. I didn't wave this time. The light stayed there for maybe 30 seconds, and then began to move. Just slowly, gliding sideways along the ridge, like they were searching for something, or someone. They moved too smoothly to be people, too silently to be machines, and then they simply vanished. This time I reported it, but the operator said, "Probably hikers." "There shouldn't be anyone up there," I replied. The operator replied, "People go where they're not supposed to. As long as you don't see fire, you're fine." But I had a very strong feeling that something wasn't right. That night, the lights didn't appear on Ridge 46. Instead, they appeared closer. It was around 1 a.m. when a faint glow caught my eye directly below the tower, maybe 100 yards into the trees. There was no road or trail down there. No reason for anyone to be that close. I picked up my binoculars. The glowing orb was there, but this time it was brighter than last time, almost white-blue, hovering at shoulder height between the trees, but I could see it clearly. Then a second orb behind it, and then a third one. They didn't blink even once. They just hovered there, as if waiting. I stepped backward into the tower, shut the door, and locked it. My breathing sounded like somebody else's, fast, shallow, terrified. I turned off the interior lights and sat in the darkness. That's when I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. I grabbed my radio. "Dispatch, this is Stonecap Lookout. I have someone approaching my tower. Request backup immediately." There was a long silence. Then the operator said, "Stonecap, there's no teams near you tonight. Closest ranger is at Bear Junction. That's a 2-hour hike minimum." The footsteps kept climbing. They reached outside my door and then stopped. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Everything was dead quiet. But then,
"We are watching you."
the voice wasn't loud or aggressive. As a matter of fact, it was calm. But the voice wasn't coming through the door. It was coming through the radio. Every hair on my body stood up. The operator came back after a second. "Stonecap, repeat your last transmission." But I hadn't said anything. The voice I heard, it wasn't human, so I didn't respond. Outside, I noticed something shift on the catwalk. Just a slight creak of wood, like weight being placed on it. And then, 3 knocks on the door. I didn't answer. They knocked again, and again. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the knocking stopped. The footsteps moved away, going downstairs slowly. I waited until dawn before opening that door. My final night. The forest looked normal again in the morning, like nothing had happened at night. I hadn't slept after what happened, and I knew I wouldn't make it another night. I radioed to be extracted early. They told me the ATV wouldn't reach me until sunset. Those entire daylight hours passed, and twilight finally came. I packed my gear, shut down the instruments, and sat by the window waiting for the ranger. But instead, as the last light faded, the 2 glowing orbs appeared again on the trail, maybe 50 yards away from me. This time, they were coming directly towards my tower, hovering just above ground level. My radio crackled and a voice came through. It wasn't the radio operator's voice. It was a cold, inhuman voice, the same as the previous night.
"Stay with us."
The orbs stopped hovering, and it felt like they were waiting for my reaction. I was sure that they were not going to like my answer. I grabbed my bag and ran through the back door into the woods opposite the trail. Branches whipped my face, but I didn't stop to breathe or look back. Behind me, the woods lit up with pale white-blue light. I was running for what felt like forever. I heard an engine, and someone shouting my name. It was the ranger standing on the trail, waving frantically. I collapsed near him. When I looked back through the trees, there was nothing. No lights or movement, only darkness. Ranger asked me, "Are you okay?" I told him I was just spooked by a bear. I could tell he didn't believe me. A few months later, I reached out to the previous lookout assigned to Stonecap. I found him through a retired Rangers forum. When I mentioned the ridge, Ridge 46, at first he didn't say anything, but then he asked me, "Did you see the lights?" We both looked at each other, but I didn't respond. He whispered, "They've been there longer than the lookout, longer than any of us. And they're not friendly." I asked him what he saw exactly. His reply was, "I didn't see anyone, because I left before they had the chance to stop me. I can't explain what those lights were. I try to convince myself that it was drones, or hikers, or some weird atmospheric illusion. But then I remember the knocks, the footsteps, and that voice on the radio. We are watching you." Sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I still hear the same voice.